Money is linked to kind of evaluation and comparison. There's almost a sense that it will deliver some kind of verdict about our worth. We've destigmatized sexuality, race, mental health, and this one still is very much a taboo.
Welcome to Investing Unlocked, making money make sense with me, Georgie Frost.
And me, Simon Lambert.
And we're joined today by Vicky Reynal, financial psychotherapist, Times columnist, and author of Money on Your Mind, the psychology behind financial habits. But first, Simon, time to pop psychoanalyze yourself in front of the professional. What do you reckon is your, biggest financial weakness, I suppose, when it comes to investing? Or otherwise?
Time's limited, right? I haven't got an hour to talk about my problems. Procrastination.
Yeah?
I'm terrible at procrastinating.
Okay.
I have wonderful intentions. My hit rate at seeing through those intentions is remarkably low. I make the mistakes I tell people not to make.
Do you procrastinate in other areas of life, Simon?
Oh, yeah, massively.
Talk to me, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely,
Yeah, because I was thinking one of my biggest things, I'm quite impulsive, especially when it comes to investing. I think, well, what a good idea. Let's throw loads of money at it.
Well, I read something where I also diagnosed myself as time blind a while back. Yeah, apparently that's the thing.
What's that?
Is I'm hopeless at being on time.
Oh, right.
So, because I'm time blind. It's not my fault. It's because I'm time blind. I think it's linked to my procrastination.
Oh, there we go. Well, we can ask Vicky all about it. Vicky, welcome. Now, Vicky, you've literally written the book. You are a psychotherapist, financial psychotherapist by trade. Surely you make none of the mistakes that we all make. You are as close to economics man or woman as you can get, right?
Well, not quite. I am still human. And of course, we feel emotions when it comes to investing and money choices. But what I want to believe I've developed over time is what I call financial emotional awareness, which is being conscious and aware of the emotions that could be influencing your financial choices, but not allowing them to blindly drive them.
So you can still make mistakes, you're just aware of them. Right.
Well, or hopefully I stop myself right before I do.
So you are perfect. You are economics woman. When it comes to investing specifically, but finance in general, what are the same old, I suppose, issues that you see as a practicing psychotherapist time and again?
Well, particularly when it comes to investing, I see a lot of fear. And fear is a broad term, but it encapsulates a lot of different fears. Sometimes it's the fear of giving up control of your money. It might be a fear of making mistakes and then regretting it. It can be a fear of being found out as an imposter. So there's many different fears to look into to understand what's behind somebody's reluctance investing. I also see a lot of big egos, so people that use the markets to validate their worth, to prove to the world that they're smart, that it can outsmart the markets or other investors. And then I see a lot of social-driven investing, so done not just out of the fear of missing out on an investment, but out of a desire to fit in, to be in with the latest trend, to feel a sense of belonging in a group because we're in with whatever everybody else is doing at the time.
Wondering how far back this stuff goes. Like, are we all walking around with this kind of money script in our back pocket that we never knew that we had, and that's how our life is going to turn out?
Well, it goes back, I think, sometimes to childhood even, and not always to money-related events. So I think there's the obvious things that influence our relationship with money. For example, the money scripts that we might have inherited in our family or from our parents. So things like, we don't gamble money away investing, or, debt is bad, things that we might have picked up from them or watched them do. But then there's also experiences that have nothing to do with money. For example, if we were somebody who really struggled to fit in school or were bullied a lot as a child, that might leave us with a longing to fit in when we grow up. And that longing to fit in could be expressed financially, either becoming, as I was saying, a social investor, wanting to fit in all the time, or spending money to make friends, to people please, to buy that extra round of drinks that will make us more likable, or And then there's, our personality, there's money experiences, even that we have in adulthood. All these different things kind of shape over time what we do with money as adults.
And we think in terms of people learning financial behavior and financial education from their parents in a way that if you're sensible with your money and you teach your kids that money has value, then they'll understand that and do the same thing. But how often do you see it where actually people are reacting to do almost the opposite of what their parents were doing, where you had parents who did blow a lot of money and weren't financially stable, and then you actually see the children then go on to be very financially sensible?
Well, I think what's difficult and fascinating about humans is that we never know how we're going to respond to certain circumstances, which is why siblings that were raised with the same values in the same family might turn up to be so different in their attitude to money. So I've seen people that come from scarcity, for example, who might grow up to be really anxious when it comes to money because they remember what it was like to be left longing for something and they never want to be in that position again. And then you see the other sibling kind of spending money really freely because now that they have it, they really want to enjoy it. They don't want to be frugal like their parents were. And so what we do with it is quite unpredictable and influenced by so many different things. And there's also kind of, we can end up mimicking our parents, or we might end up, as you're saying, responding and defining ourselves in opposition to them. And I've seen that in wealthy families, for example, where you might have one child becoming the really responsible one that takes over the family business, and another sibling taking on a completely different stance and saying, well, I'm not going to let money drive all my choices. I'm going to pursue my artistic career, or, define myself in opposition to my parents, almost rejecting money as something important that I value.
But first, a word from Pension Bee, who are sponsoring this series of Investing Unlocked. Pensions can feel frustrating, even for those who are engaged with their finances, often because of limited visibility and control, too many pots and too little clarity. Pension Bee, a leading online pension provider, aims to change that. Their platform lets you bring pensions together, make flexible contributions, and manage your retirement savings in a way that's clear and intentional. It's about treating your pension as part of your wider financial plan and retirement as a goal you can work towards with confidence. To get more control over your future, download the Pension Bee app or visit their website. And as always, when investing, remember, capital is at risk. I'm curious, Simon, you and I both financial journalist. You have greater standing, I would like to think. Yes, especially in the world of investing. But however, we're talking about the same sort of thing. I'm wondering what your background was like. Were your parents discussing things like investing with you? Because I thought about it just before the show. I don't even know that my parents invest. I mean, I know they have pensions, so yes, but I have absolutely no idea. How at my age and with what I do, I've never even had that conversation with my parents. But I know that when I grew up, money was quite a fraught subject. So maybe, you tell me, maybe that's why I don't like broaching it with them. But I'm curious for you, was it something that was freely discussed and you thought, yeah, I want to be a finance journalist?
It wasn't freely discussed, but it wasn't also hidden away and never talked about. I mean, in terms of investing, it's hard to remember, but, I'm of an age where you had some of those big privatizations when I was a child. And, in some of those, I think, my mum and dad had bought us some shares or whatever. I remember also when Halifax demutualized from being a building society, I was just old enough to get some free shares. And it was like what's this? My parents, my dad worked in the commercial property industry. My mum ran her own business. Now, but both of them came from relatively, they didn't come from backgrounds of affluence and money. And what came out of that, I think, with both of them, from what I perceive, is that they were quite careful with their money. They were careful about how you spent your money. It wasn't that you didn't spend your money, and it wasn't that you didn't do nice stuff, go on holidays, have nice things, but you were really careful about what you did buy and making sure that you got the most for what you were doing. And I think that's something that I took from them and then into my life. So I'm more spendy than my wife, for example, right? Who is much more frugal. And through her teenage years, certainly there was a point where, her family had to be. But I'm not, my spending is more attached to that kind of like, well, if I'm going to go away, I want to go on holiday. And I'm happy to spend the money going on holiday, but I'm not just going to blow it on some, fancy holiday for the sake of it being fancy. I'm going to try and get the most I possibly can for the money I'm spending, kind of thing.
So value for money was emphasized.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as a society, we Brits are famously not very good about talking about money. Now, because I'm a finance journalist, I talk about money all the time. So this doesn't sort of ring true in my life, except with my parents and talking to them about investing, clearly. But is that silence holding us back hugely?
It is, and it's interesting how it's, I think, the last taboo, really. We've destigmatized sexuality, race, mental health, and this one still is very much a taboo. And I think it's because money is linked to kind of evaluation and comparison. There's almost a sense that it will deliver some kind of verdict about our worth. It will reveal to others whether we're successful or whether we've failed in life.
But it kind of is, though, isn't it? It kind of is. If you do well at work, you get a pay rise. It is an idea of, how well you are doing. It just so happens that certain jobs get paid very differently.
But I think it's more about our fear of judgment. If we disclose that information, if we talk about it, what's going on in the other person's mind? What do they consider to be success or failure? Are they going to be as critical and judgmental as we are of ourselves? And there's definitely a lot of shame when it comes to people and money. So I think there's that kind of sense that it will reveal too much. It might place us on a social ladder. It might say something about our privilege or our morality. It's really packed with meaning. It can be a symbol of many different things, and that varies from person to person. And I think that's why it feels too vulnerable to disclose it.
Do you think we'd be better off as a society? And by better off, I don't mean better off as in wealthier. I just mean just
maybe
better off, mentally speaking. Do you think we'd be better off if people's pay data was published, or if people had to publish their tax returns? If it was, you had that transparency where you could see what someone else was paid, or you could see someone else's tax return?
I don't know about that, but I know that normalizing talking about money would definitely be helpful to people, because there's so many people that I come across in my work and outside of it who are struggling with shame, with questions that they are too afraid to ask, with debt that they're hiding from family. There's so many money secrets, and different surveys will give different numbers, but many, many people hold secrets because they're afraid of what the other will think, be it their partner, their family. So I think normalizing talking about money would certainly help people feel more confident about it. And ultimately, financial well-being is not about how much money you have. It's about how confident and in control you feel about the money that you have, so that you can make good decisions. And when you're hiding, when you're ashamed, then you don't ask the right questions and you don't learn. It keeps you stuck.
I'm in an interesting position in that, years ago I had a terrible back injury, couldn't work for a long time, and got very much into debt. And there was feelings of shame around that. Like, I'm not the sort of person that should be going and getting help or benefits. So I never did. And so I put everything on credit card. And of course, that's a silly thing to do. And now I sort of come around the other side and I'm earning more. There's equally a feeling of sort of shame in that as well, and don't want to talk about that. It's a strange sort of way to be, and I've experienced both sides of it. Why would that be the case? Is there a happy point in the middle where just about the right amount I can earn and then I'll be super comfortable?
Well, I think the ideal point would be to earn what you earn and not feel guilty about it. And sometimes it's difficult to surpass our parents, if you're earning more than they did or friends or family did. Sometimes there's relational dynamics going on. For some women, it's hard to earn more than their husbands because it's a model that doesn't match what we've learned. If we grew up in a family in which dad was bringing in money and mom was home or earning less. So there's many different things that can influence a sense of shame around being wealthy. Sometimes it's simply, the wealthy were talked about in a negative way, maybe even subtle. They were referred to as greedy or too indulgent when they spent money on things. And all those comments or narratives can really influence how we feel when we then manage to become successful financially. It might be clashing with
It's interesting what you say about the dynamics of relationships, because it does shift the dynamic of relationship. Particularly, let's say if a female in a relationship now starts earning more than her partner, it can really change. I've been in a situation where I've earned more than a male partner and it ultimately killed the relationship. Vicky, what's the difference between guilt and shame?
Well, guilt is when we feel we've done something wrong. We've made a mistake and we can, forgive ourselves from that and move on, learn from it. Shame is more pervasive. It's more difficult to address because it's what that mistake says about us, about who we are. Does that make us a bad investor? Does that make us bad with money? Does that reveal that we were an imposter after all and we know nothing about investing?
Feeding into the getting rid of a stock? Is it because, it went down, I made one bad decision, or is it that means I'm a terrible investor?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, it's a very British thing, what Georgie just said about the kind of being embarrassed that you're doing well and you're earning like plenty of money. And there's also this,
Let's not get carried away there, Simon. Rolling in it.
and what you just said about the kind of like looking at wealthy as maybe being bad is, again, it feels like quite a British trait. Now, the Americans have quite a different attitude to this kind of stuff. I'm not saying they're like polar opposites, but I think there is more of a culture there of like, I earn lots of money and that's great and I'm doing well. It's that they'll walk into a room and they'll talk themselves up, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm making money, I'm saving money, I'm getting wealthy, I'm investing.
Yes.
And there is an investing culture in America, and that seems to fit glove in hand with that. Do you think if we were a bit less reticent about doing well and earning money and growing wealthy, then we might have more an investing culture like they do over there?
Definitely. And I think part of that is because the less we talk about it, the less we learn about it. And knowledge is what helps people build the confidence and get the reassurance from others that they're at least going in the right direction. Everybody does it in a different way, but to be able to have those conversations openly and unashamedly, I think definitely would help more people invest.
My dad used to have this saying, because he used to work in America a lot, that in America, if they see a lovely car, they want the lovely car. In Britain, if they see a lovely car, they want to key the car. Before we carry on, a quick word from our sponsor, PensionBee. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you care a fair bit about investing and making the most of your money. But here's the thing, you don't have to be a pensioner to care about your pension. In fact, the earlier you pay attention, the more powerful it can be. Your pension is likely to be one of, if not the biggest investments you have, yet it's often the one people ignore the longest. That's where PensionBee comes in. They're a leading online pension provider focused on helping people build confidence and take real control of their retirement savings at any stage of life. Their app and website make it easy to combine old pension pots, manage contributions flexibly, and see exactly what's happening with your money all in one place. You can also access your pension from age 55, rising to 57 from 2028. If you want to take a more active role in your pension investing, download the PensionBee app or visit their website to get started. Remember, when investing, your capital is at risk. Let's look at a few of the classic behaviours around investing. And the one that I said at the top, and the one that certainly the government would love us to stop doing, is putting so much money in cash that would otherwise we could use to invest. Why do you think that we do that? Because I'm thinking back as to, my childhood. I remember the Abbey National Savings Account. We did talk about savings. Yes, absolutely. Investing, no. Savings, yes. We do like savings.
I think people don't invest for a number of different reasons, and it's important not to generalize and to really try to be specific when you go within yourself with a bit of curiosity and non-judgment to really find out what it is that's holding you back. For some people, it's a lack of knowledge. They just don't know enough. So they might come to my consulting room and just say, I'm bad with money. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And actually, it turns out they're pretty restrained when it comes to spending. They're pretty good savers. And it's investing that they don't know how to do. They've never read about it. So it's really a lack of knowledge that's driving it. For other people, it's fear. And that fear could be a fear of losing control. They might have incurred debt in the past or have gambled money. And so they know that there is a part of them that can be quite out of control. And so they're afraid of approaching investing because they're afraid of losing control, not just giving up control. Then there's other people who are afraid of making mistakes. They might have grown up in families where, mistakes were hardly punished, or you really got rewarded for doing well. And if that's the case, then it might feel a lot safer to save, because then you're not really making a mistake when you're saving, than to take any risk and then make a mistake. So I think we really have to wonder what's behind. There's also the money scripts. I've heard a lot of women say, but I grew up in a family in which investing was for men. I feel like an imposter if I try. I feel like I don't know as much as the men in the room, or I'm afraid of disclosing how little I know by asking a question. So those insecurities can also hold somebody back. And there's a certain kind of clash with your identity. When you don't see yourself as an investor, then bringing yourself to do it can be very uncomfortable, because you do feel like somebody's going to find out that actually you don't belong there. You're in a group of people where everybody knows more than you.
And that's an interesting point. I'm going back to when you said that people say I'm terrible with money. I hear that a lot, especially with people who are my friends that I'm talking to. And when I was a sports journalist, I would have people go, oh, I don't know anything about sport. And what they're doing is they're just comparing it to what they think I know. And in a world of social media, does that make it even worse, that comparison? Because as soon as you start saying, well, I don't know as much as Simon, I don't know as much as you, it's best I don't do anything at all because I'm terrible. But actually what you find out when you do speak to these people is, like you said, they're in a much, much better position and know more about money than actually they would give themselves credit for.
That broad statement can be used in different ways. I think some people use it as an excuse not to do anything about money. So it's in a way what they're saying is, I'm not interested in money and dealing with it. I just, I'll do the basics. Other people are genuinely afraid of dealing with it because of what they don't know. So I think when it comes to comparisons in social media, when we are already insecure about what we're doing with money, then we tend to compare ourselves unfavorably to others. So we'll see success right and left, people achieving milestones, people getting to their financial goal. And that creates an illusion of success everywhere. And we don't stop for a second to think about, well, what risk did this person take in order to make that money that they're claiming they made? We just use it to beat ourselves up about how badly we're doing and how well everybody else seems to be doing, which when it comes to investing can be quite dangerous, because if you think about it, before, investing used to be quite a passive, private activity. You'd put your money in a fund and, you'd let it grow over time. Now it's very performative. Social media is creating this space in which people are kind of demonstrating how well they're doing. And that creates a certain illusion of urgency. It makes the passive investor look like they're doing something wrong. They might question their decisions. It creates a sort of urgency around taking action. And that can be quite damaging when it comes to investing.
There is a trend that I hate on social media, particularly among certain sort of influencers, investors, traders, which is, this is how much I made this month. And some of the amounts are ludicrous. They're like 50,000 a month. And you're thinking, well, well done to you at 30 years old or something, making that sort of money. But you're thinking, one, are you? Two, how are you doing it? By some dodgy affiliate link? I don't know, some free trading course. But you do look at it and you think, what's the point in that? The performative element is actually really interesting. I hadn't thought about it. Simon, what do you think of that?
I think it's always risky when you're looking for, I want to learn how to do something, and then you end up on something like that. So I would say that would be akin to, there's a number of things that people do in life, like investing, where actually they know almost nothing about it before they do it. Most people have never looked after a newborn baby before they become parents, and then raised a child. Most people
which is marvellous when you think about it. Yeah. Really marvellous, because I've only had a dog, and
No, I'm not saying that the investing, sort of urge is the same as the maternal or paternal urge, right? Okay, but it is also not as complicated as keeping a small human being alive, right? Most people have no experience in buying houses when they go and buy a house. I mean, an environment where you definitely put yourself at the wrong end of the table is most people have no experience in buying or selling cars when they go and buy and sell cars. Yet we manage to do these things like all the time. Now, most people have no experience in investing. So the thing to do is to do what you do in those other scenarios. Okay, there's lots of people who go and they read parenting books, or they ask people, or they get advice from friends and family. Or same with buying a house or whatever. And it's like, but what you probably wouldn't do is go and watch a really short, high energy video on the internet from someone who's like, I've raised 20 children in the last 10 years. Look at them, they're amazing. Or you wouldn't try and go get some advice on buying your first home from someone who's like, I've bought 70 houses. So don't go get that advice from the person who claims to be making £50,000 a month on the internet. Just go read some more sensible things. Listen to some sensible podcasts. Do that kind of thing instead.
That is a fair point. Going back to the child analogy, which I quite like, it's a good one. And also buying a car or buying a house. These are sort of things that we are not having children, you don't have to, but once it's kind of there, you sort of have to do something about it. Or, buying a house or buying a car, you kind of have to do it oftentimes. Is there an idea that with investing, Simon, that we almost feel like there's a choice? It's not quite the imperative that we feel that the message hasn't quite got through as to maybe how important it is for a lot of people. Could that be playing a part in it?
I think so. Yeah, it's true. And it comes back to the saving money thing. People are perfectly capable of saving money, quite often in their current account, earning no interest. But people are perfectly capable of saving money or opening a saving account because they know that's the thing they need to do. I need to save some money. But they don't think that, I need to invest thing. That's the thing I have to do. And which is ironic because there is a part of the investment world where we have managed to achieve that, which is pensions through auto-enrolment. And I think that's quite a strong lever to pull when you're talking to people about investing, when they say, investing's not for people like me. I don't have enough money to invest yet. I'm not rich enough to invest. The usual excuses. The thing is, though, I do want to invest, but it's not that I really want to get the best thing. It's just I'm worried about getting the wrong thing. Is to go, well, look, you're already investing in your pension. And you did that really easily. In fact, you barely even tried.
But someone else did it for you. So, should we auto-invest people?
But it would be really simple to replicate that yourself. Yeah. You wouldn't,
There's still that frictional element of I have to take a step.
We're at finding out how to view a house and make her often on a house stage here. It's not that difficult to kind of copy it. But maybe we do need to auto-invest people at work. I think some of those ideas around auto-investing and auto-saving at work are quite interesting and maybe would help people clear the hurdle.
And maybe to translate it to something that could be implemented now, for people who are quite afraid of taking those first steps, people tend to see it in a binary way. I either invest or I don't invest. But how about you start investing a very small amount of money, one that doesn't make you too anxious if you were to lose it, which you won't if you invest it in the long term. And then you automate maybe transfers to that investment account over time, and maybe you grow them over time as you become more comfortable. I think what keeps people stuck sometimes is this idea that you either do it or you don't do it. And instead of looking at it as a gradual process that you can build confidence through. And sometimes it's action that breeds confidence. It's not the other way around. You don't have to feel fully confident before you take the first step. It can actually work the other way.
And actually nowadays, technology and apps are actually playing in our favour. I mean, I first started getting involved in investing. I downloaded the Moneybox app, and it was the Roundup app. If you spend £2.50 on a coffee, do you remember those days? It would round it up 50p. And after, months or a year, you're like, wow, that was really easy. So actually there's a lot of technology that's working, I suppose, with our behavioural biases and instincts that can really, really help us.
Yes, it's taking away that emotional choice every time of, yes, I'm going to invest more. No, actually, it's happening automatically. You've set it up and you don't have to think about it, which is great.
Now, we've spoken about those people who keep their money in cash. Let's go to the other extreme. Those people who think they are all that when it comes to investing, Simon. I'm not saying you, by the way. I know a few of my friends who do rate themselves as pretty mean investors. And then you look at what they've done and you think, okay. There is a bit of that, though, isn't there? When the markets go down, it's obviously, geopolitics or something. But when they get a gain, it's because they are good. Overconfidence in investing, Simon. Do you see it?
Yeah, and what's really interesting about that is we watched it unfold, 5 and a bit years ago now, with the lockdown trading phenomenon, where markets crashed hard ahead of lockdown, and then went back up very, very rapidly. And some companies, and also crypto and things like that, made stratospheric gains. And you saw a lot of people who that kind of, it was characterized as a cohort of people who were at home and they suddenly had more money because they weren't spending the money, and they would have thought, I'll get stock market's going up, I'll get involved in the stock market. And they did very, very well. And they did very, very well for like 3 months, 6 months. And you saw it play out where people were getting overconfident and considering themselves to be, some form of investing genius, because they were up 80%. But then also you started to get scenarios where people had outsized sort of expectations of what returns should look like. And then you had a big shakeout after that, and a lot of people got their fingers burned. But I do still think, actually, since that period, we have seen some very big companies their share prices go up by so much that I think people have anchored onto, if I'm not making 20% a year or 30% a year, it's not worth it. Not realizing that 20 or 30% a year is a completely out there, kind of return, and the kind of return that you only get once in every 7 years or something like that. And 6 or 7% is much more normal.
I have seen people become kind of overconfident investors out of a desire to try to maybe validate how special, how smart they are, using the markets to do that. And sometimes when we begin to analyze, where's that desire coming from? It can go back to quite early in childhood. Sometimes there's people who maybe have grown up in a very chaotic environment, very volatile emotions and situations at home, who then use the market as a place in which to triumph over uncertainty. So rather than being completely panicked when things begin to go up and down, they feel they can dominate it and they can still make money. And that gives them a sense of control, almost as if it's kind of healing something of that lack of control that they felt back then. Other times it's...
what happens when they can't control it? Because inevitably you cannot control the market.
Well, I think it's more painful than for, the average person just doing it to make a return. When investing becomes so deeply personal, losses can feel really hard to bounce back from. So people who tie their investment and money to their self-worth, when they lose, and I've certainly seen people who went through bankruptcy, And 10 years later, they still couldn't pick themselves up from that, because what was lost wasn't just money. It was part of themselves. It was their self-respect. It was the respect of other people, or at least that's what they thought. So I think it's so important as an investor not to make it personal, because that's when you can really get caught up in doing things that are irrational, making choices driven by emotion, and lose a lot of money as a result.
I heard a great story of someone that I know who basically had £1,000 for an inheritance, and they saw some random crypto coin and thought, oh, why not? Throw it on black. Made £44,000. Took the money out, said, thank you very much. I'm never going to do it again. Which I thought, bravo to you, because other people would be thinking, I am a crypto genius. Wow. But listening to you talk there, Vicky, I thought there's a bit of gambling almost. And people do say investing is like gambling. Do you see any similarities in almost the psyche of some people?
Well, it depends on how you do it. So there are people that use it in that way, looking for fortune to prove to them that they're special, or using it to get a thrill. So now you see a lot of apps being developed targeted to young people for investing, but they're actually gamified, and it feels like they're playing a game. They're not losing real money. And it's really dangerous, because our prefrontal cortex, which is a part of the brain that regulates impulsivity and emotions, doesn't develop until well in our mid-20s. And so you have all these young people who are prone to take risk, who are not able to manage those impulses, who are losing a lot of money as a result. So it's what drives people to make those risk investments can be quite different. But yeah, it can definitely be used as gambling.
What do you think when you look at trends like crypto and GameStop and all those sorts of meme stock trends and all those sorts of things? You just look at it and go, oh, yeah, humans.
I think what's really interesting about it is that there's something, referred to as the classic bubble chart, right? And it's basically a line that goes like that, and then it goes like that, and then it goes straight up in the air, and then it comes down a bit, and then it doesn't quite gain the top, and then it comes crashing back down. And that you can map that same line over a lot of these very hot property investments, and they can be very different investments. You could map it over, crypto. You can map it over shares that go to the moon. You can map it over all kinds of things. And what it is, I think, is a chart of human behavior. It's a chart of herd mentality. It's a chart of the madness of crowds. It's also a chart that shows if you get in early enough and get out before it crashes, then you'll do all right. But what you're drawing is you're drawing people's behavioural mistakes on a chart.
And I said, why don't we learn? And is it because maybe there are stories, like you said, where people do make a lot of money, and then so we think we hold on to those? Why is it that time and again we keep making the same mistakes, either as a group of people or individuals?
Well, I think that it's an exciting fantasy, to hop onto this new trend and make a lot of money. And won't that be a quick fix? And all the things that money will resolve in our lives, it will resolve conflict in our relationship. It will make us more desirable and lovable. It will give us freedom and security. I think we attach so much hope to money. And when we see the potential to make it and something exciting, that also gives us a sense of kind of collective belonging. We're all in this together making money. I think it's really appealing.
Can we detach ourselves from that feeling?
Well, I think with everything we've been talking about today, the more conscious you are of your tendency to hold on to things, or to get excited when things look exciting, or too good to be true, or whatever your tendency is, the more conscious you are of it, the more you have a choice to either lean into that one more time or hold back and question your motives. Why am I buying this hot crypto stock? Is it because I really believe it matches my long-term plans, and or am I just doing it because everybody else is? And is there a different way in which I can feel I fit in and I can follow the conversation and not feel marginalized in my group of friends that doesn't involve putting money in it? So I think knowledge of yourself, self-awareness, opens up choices.
I know it's very individual, but can you define what a healthy investing mindset looks like?
I would say that in most cases, it's one that maybe thinks a bit longer term, doesn't overreact to volatility, doesn't overreact to news. It doesn't um, become too emotional when things aren't going to plan. It's a strategy with clear goals and objectives. So, am I in this for, to make money this year to pay for whatever my tax bill at the end of the year, or am I doing it for my pension and my long-term savings? So I think clarity on your goals, not making rash decisions, and not making it too personal when things go up and down. I think that's probably what one should aim for.
If there was one thing that you wish people understood about money, or maybe one question that they should ask themselves before they ever open an investment account, what would it be?
That investment is not a test of intelligence. It's an emotional journey. So before you open an account, be aware that the biggest challenge is not going to be choosing the right fund or the right set of stocks. It will be to manage your emotions in times of volatility that will evoke doubt. It will maybe bring up a sense of urgency, a desire to act or react. And that's when you need to be able to find a certain emotional resilience to remind yourself about your process, about your long-term strategy, and keep cool. And if you look at examples like Warren Buffett, he was the personification of staying calm in times of volatility, and that certainly paid off for him.
So are there questions that I could ask myself, or people could ask themselves before they get started, or even if they've got started but they keep making the same mistakes, to get a bit more clarity, to get a bit more focus about their goals, but also the type of investor that they are, and therefore know how they might react in certain situations?
Well, I'd be curious about, what has the past shown me? What are my patterns when it comes to investing? Am I always panic selling when the markets are all over the place? Or am I always too conservative, holding back, always staying in that low risk band? Why am I doing that? Is it because I actually believe that emotionally I cannot handle a bit more risk and volatility? Or is it because of scripts that I've inherited growing up? So I think really being curious about why you do what you do. Spot the patterns, see what triggers you emotionally. Do you tend to feel a lot of regret and self-blame when things go wrong? Do you tend to feel like losses are catastrophic, or can you just move quickly on from them? So all these things, I think, will point you to your investment profile.
All right, then, the £1,000 move. You have an unexpected £1,000. What do you do with it, Vicky?
I'm very torn because part of me would want to give it away to a financial literacy charity, because that's
we've not had that yet, have we, Simon?
It's definitely something that we're lacking. And fortunately, this is starting to happen more and more. Money is being taught in schools slowly and more steadily. But that's definitely something that will help people become more comfortable talking about money, asking the right questions, and investing it eventually. But yeah, the other answer would be I would put it in an index fund and not look at it for 30 years.
Both very sensible answers, aren't they, Simon? Right, Simon says,
I think the main thing that I took away from the conversation is that people can do themselves a favour by doing quite a bit more thinking about what their relationship to money is, and how they react, and where it's come from, and how they save, how they invest, how they feel about things. But also that this doesn't have to be a particularly, onerous, time-consuming or difficult task for you, because you can think about all of these things at any given moment, in the day. You can think about it when you're on the train on the way to work. You can think about it in the car when you're driving. You don't have to be sat down there doing some work, writing it down on a piece of paper. You can just think about these things, and just doing a bit of thinking about these things in your idle moments, rather than scrolling on your phone, for example, would probably do everyone quite a few favours.
Indeed, Simon. Wise words there. Thank you. And Vicky, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you too. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on social or email us. Remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and make sure to tell your friends who don't know their FOMO from their FOBO about us too. I'm not sure I know what FOBO is either. Before you go, just a quick reminder that everything you've heard on this podcast is for information and education only. It's not personal financial advice. Investing involves risk, and if you're unsure, it's best to speak to a regulated financial advisor.